Hello, this is Chanuk Kim from Seoul National University, and I'll present our work, Graph Spectral Filtering with Chebyshev Interpolation for Recommendation. Uh, as you already know, collaborative filtering recommends by identifying shared preference patterns in user-item interactions. Recently, CF methods treating interactions as a graph is demonstrating superior performance with graph convolutional network-based CF being representative. In general, GCM-based CF has two modules, embedding layer and neighborhood aggregation. And we identify two potential bottlenecks in these modules. Embedding layer, which represents preferences in a d-dimensional, limited d-dimensional latent state, is hard to preserve detailed preferences. And neighborhood aggregation, which integrates information from interactive users or items by using just simplistic operation of fixed weighted sum, is hard to flexibly leverage diverse preference patterns. And in order to gain principled understanding of these bottlenecks, we use this tool of spectral graph theory. For people who are not familiar with this concept, we'll take a brief look. A graph signal refers to a set of scalar values assigned to each node, and when values on adjacent nodes are similar, then the signal corresponds to low frequency and high frequency otherwise. In more recommended system application, we can consider a graph where nodes are movies and edges are the extent of two movies being watched together. So low frequency signal in this case corresponds to scores on the adjacent nodes being similar, and it can be interpreted as globally shared preference. For example, people's preference action movies to romance movies. And more high frequency signals can be interpreted as a locally shared preference patterns. For example, a specific preference of spy action movies among other action movies. And more extreme case with higher and higher frequency, it can be interpreted as random noise because these signals are not shared by users in this case. And one good point to decompose a graph signal in a spectral domain is that it can be filtered by using a transfer function, which assigns desired weights to each frequency, so that it can be filtered in our desired way. This is called graph spectral filtering. Returning to our problem, we theoretically show that neighborhood aggregation with embedding layer in GCM-based CF is actually equivalent to linear low-pass filtering with frequency cutoff when viewed in graph spectral filtering. So this brown one, this frequency cutoff, actually can be beneficial because it eliminates the random noises that are useless for recommendation, but it also has a risk of discarding like these minor preference patterns that can be beneficial for defined personalization. And this red one, the linearity, can be difficult to assign optimal weights to each frequency. Accordingly, our main objective becomes to get flexible filtering utilizing full frequency spectrum. To do so, we first input a user's low interaction history to a filter without using embedding layer. So we can fully utilize the whole spectrum information without losing, without any frequency cutoff. And to get more flexible filter, we initially consider the analytic transfer function, but it has a disadvantage of incurring high computational cost because it needs full eigen decomposition of adjacent metrics. And it is very infeasible in real-world recommender system with large number of items. And polynomial transfer function actually doesn't need matrix decomposition, so it can be far more efficient. Summing up, to consider both flexibility and efficiency, we choose to approximate desired transfer function by employing Chebyshev interpolation, which is known for good properties like min-max error. And it is also a good choice for recommender system because it is known for its effectiveness in mitigating the lunge phenomenon, which is a failure in approximation of extremely high or low frequencies. Actually, it is important because in recommender systems, these extremely high and extremely low frequencies correspond to pure noises and globally shared preference patterns that can be handled carefully. And when we revisit the conventional graph convolutional network-based CF, it has a transfer function of a rapidly suppressing high frequencies as more layers are stacked. So now our question is to how can we choose a better transfer function than these existing GCNs? We choose Plateau function. It not only emphasizes the lowest frequencies, but also assigns moderate weight to a little bit higher frequencies. I can call it mid-frequency to contain this yellow interval. And lastly, suppress pure noises just like existing ones. So by preserving these local preferences, this yellow part, we can focus more on the emphasizing the local preference patterns that can be beneficial to make more refined, personalized recommendations. And in addition, to handle with this sharp transition in future and popularity bias, these problems that cannot be handled solely by Chebyshev filter, we additionally incorporate two modules, idle path filter and degree-based normalization. So in summary, this is our overall structure. So a user's low interaction history inputs to our filter as an input graph signal, and it is processed by normalization, and it will be filtered by our main module, this Chebyshev filter, and also with additional ID path filter. Then this filtered signal corresponds to course on each item, so that it can be used to make recommendation based on these scores. For fair evaluation of our methods, we use these three most popular benchmarking data sets used in collaborative filtering setting. And we strictly followed evaluation protocols in previous studies. We observed that our Chebyshev achieves best performance on CF-based top-end recommendation tasks in terms of both liquor and decision. And to assess the effectiveness of utilizing full frequency spectrum, we conduct an experiment varying the ratio of frequencies being used. For this dotted line, the performance of keeping just keeping lower frequencies decrease as the ratio increases, which indicates that higher frequencies actually consist of useless noises. But for the solid line, the performance of our Chebyshev gets its peak performance when the full frequency is utilized. It means that high frequency also has a good information for detailed personalization, and it can be beneficial for recommendation. And it is only when these signals are filtered by this detailed filtering, just like our ChebysCF. And to evaluate the effectiveness of more flexible filtering, we compare our Chebyshev to filterings of existing GCM-based CF with varying depth of layers. And we observe that our Chebyshev outperforms all of them. So it indicates that flexible response to diverse preference patterns leads to better recommendation quality. And evaluation studies further highlights our Chebyshev filter because removing Chebyshev filter leads to the most severe performance drop. But one thing to note is that on data sets, just like Koala in this case, linear filtering can be sufficient. So the additional gain of Chebyshev filter can be limited. And to assess the efficiency, we observe that we get improved performance with lower latency compared to SOTA model, but it is slightly slower than lightweight models like LightGCN and GFCF, but it largely outperforms them. For summary, we identify two key limitations of GCM-based CF from a graph spectral perspective. The first one is limited capacity in exploiting full frequency information, and second one is inflexible filtering behavior. And to address these issues, we propose Chebyshev, a graph spectral filtering framework that effectively approximates flexible graph filters using Chebyshev interpolation. Thank you for listening. This is it.